Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Yep. How's everyone doing this week?
Good, thank you.
Good.
Doing
How have you
well,
been?
doing well.
Looks
No,
like you got a full house.
Yes, it looks that way. I'm just going down the. Okay, someone has feedback in there. All right, my watch may be a little fast, but I'm showing 3 o'clock.
Ready to go.
All right, let's get it done. Well, of course, thank everyone for taking time from your schedules and work days to join us today to talk about the all-important money. So we'll start with just doing a quick roll call. And Lynn, are you here to support in that capacity, or do I need to handle roll call and public comment?
Yes, I'm here, Chair Rogers.
Okay, well, if you don't mind doing the roll call to make us official,
Okay.
then we will get on with the agenda.
Okay, Chair Rogers
I'm present.
and Trustee Benavides. I don't see her on the line at this time. Trustee Raymaker,
Here.
Trustee Watt,
Here.
and Trustee Wilson.
Here.
Chair Rogers, you have a quorum.
Excellent. So we will go ahead and go to public comment. Lynn, are you aware, do we have anyone signed up for public comment, or have we received any emails concerning public comment?
No, we do not have any public comment at this time.
And then I'll default to Councilman Welt. Do we need to actually read all this under public comment, or we can just move on?
If we don't have any comment, we don't need to read it. Sure.
Okay. Okay, it sounds like Skynet took over your microphone, but I think I deciphered that you say we don't have to read that if we don't have public.
That's correct. Is that any better?
Okay. Sounds much better. All right, so we will go to agenda item number 3, committee action to accept the proposed agenda. Do you have a motion?
So
Wilson,
moved.
so moved.
Raymaker second.
All right, Trustee Wilson, motion, Trustee Rainmaker seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, we have our agenda approved. So we will go to new business, and then I will turn it over to Floresto, and I'm sure he will bring in Executive Director Watson to chime in to go over for discussion only regarding the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2023, the tentative budget submittal for the Department of Taxation and preparation for the May 19th, 2022 budget public hearing. Again, this is for discussion only. So with that said, I'll turn it over to you, Floresto, to share your screen and walk us through the numbers.
Excuse me,
All right.
Floresto.
Yes.
Before you start, I'd like to state that Trustee Melendres has joined the meeting. Thank you.
Okay,
Welcome,
thank you, Lynn.
Jose.
Thanks, Lynn, and thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll dive, well, one more time for the record. I am Floresto Caballas, Chief Financial Officer for the district, and I'll jump right into the budget for fiscal year 2023. This is a summary of the total revenues for, let me jump back to the beginning here, all funds. And as you can see, the general fund is increasing by almost 18%. I'll be covering the general fund revenues and expenditures in more detail in a couple of slides. The only other items I'd like to highlight here are the special revenue funds. The grant fund and the gift fund increased. That's something we did intentionally. These budgets are actually arbitrarily set at a high enough amount to cover any potential grants or gifts that the district receives in each year. And we raised it this year because of our efforts to increase other sources of funding from grants and gifts. These are the total expenditures for all of the funds for fiscal year 2023. And again, you can see the increase in the general fund that I'll be covering in more detail at 6%. We talked about the increases in the gift fund and the grant fund, and the capital projects fund actually nearly doubled. And that's because of the additional projects we're taking on in the upcoming fiscal year, from construction projects to other capital projects that's been deferred over the last couple of years during the pandemic. Here's a more detailed summary of the general fund budget, the revenues in particular. And most of the revenue line items aren't expected to change very much, with the exception, as always, our two largest sources of revenue: the property taxes and the consolidated sales tax, or CTX. The property taxes are increasing by over 11%, which is actually significant in the current year. With property tax caps in Nevada, residential property will not increase by more than 3%. And for non-residential property, the cap is 8%. And those are for existing real estate. By increasing 11%, that actually shows how much property is coming online at 100% for these new parcels. And so that's fairly significant and adds up to about a $6 million increase from the previous budget year. The consolidated sales tax increased by 32% year over year compared to the prior year budget. But we've seen that the sales tax collections in each month during the current fiscal year has come in much higher than expected. The original $23.4 million budgeted for fiscal year 2022 is pretty conservative. It's based on a number calculated by the state of Nevada. And even my estimates weren't much higher than that, at around $25 to $26 million. But we are now expecting a total of about $30 million to be collected by the end of fiscal year 2022. So this $31 million in CTX revenues we have budgeted for fiscal year 2023 is actually only about a 3% increase from the prior fiscal year, or from the current fiscal year estimated that we will actually likely collect by the end of this fiscal year, compared to the $23.4 million that we budgeted for a year ago. Here is a detailed presentation of the expenditures for the general fund by line items. You can see that salaries will increase by 3% for the upcoming budget year. And again, that's worth noting because on July 1st, annual pay increases along with merit increases at 3% and another 3% respectively for both of those pay increases. We would expect a larger increase there, but because of our efforts going all the way back to the voluntary employee separation program, the VEST program, and all of the vacancies that resulted from that program and the positions we froze over the 2 years during the pandemic, we've been slowly filling those positions over time as the district's services have been rolling out based on customer needs. And we haven't been haphazardly filling those positions. From the executive director to the administrative team, we've been closely reviewing positions as they're filled and making sure the positions as designed represent the services that are actually needed at this time and throughout the pandemic, along with actually fitting into the services we're providing now and going forward. So that increase of 3% reflects our efforts to control savings in that area. You'll see that benefits increased by a higher amount, 7%. We would normally expect to see a correlation between the increases in salaries and the increases in benefits. The benefits budgeted number is actually higher than it increased by a higher rate than salaries because of the nature that I just referred to and the way we filled positions. For example, we may have 3 part-time page positions that was converted to 1 full-time multi-services assistant, and that person would actually receive benefits. So although we would normally see an increase in benefits close to the increase in salaries of about 3 to 4%, it's higher because of the additional benefits that are being paid to these employees as we're filling those positions. Service and supplies increased by 11%. Again, that's due to lifting restrictions and the offering of more programs and other services. And so we would expect a higher rate of increase for services and supplies expenditures in the upcoming fiscal year. Library materials is always calculated at 15% of total expenditures. And in previous years, that number was high as 20% of total expenditures. It was deemed unnecessary since our collection and bibliographic services department does a good job of developing the collection with relevant materials at 15%. And so that's been the precedent we set years ago. And again, I just wanted to emphasize that the 15% has been sufficient and will continue to be as far as we're concerned, based on even the increasing cost of electronic media that we've been transitioning to over the years. And that leads us to the ending fund balance, which is always a source of liquidity and provides the district with flexibility during economic downturns, and even outside of economic downturns where we want to take advantage of opportunities such as building construction projects or new libraries, which is on our agenda. The increase in revenues that are expected in the upcoming fiscal year, combined with our savings efforts to really control costs, has allowed us to maintain a $15.3 million fund balance at the end of fiscal year 2023, which is still 20% of total expenditures. The general rule of thumb for a safe cushion for local governments has traditionally been 5 to 10% of total expenditures, but because of the challenges in the economy we've experienced over the years, 20% was deemed to be more prudent as a percentage of total expenditures. And this ending fund balance at the end of fiscal year 2023 is actually after $34 million of transfers from the general fund to the capital projects fund. And again, that's the result of higher revenues than expected, prudent budgeting in terms of controlling costs. And we also did not transfer any funds from the general fund to the capital projects fund in fiscal year 2021. The pandemic started at the end of fiscal year 2020. And because of the uncertainty regarding collection of revenues over the years, and really there was so much uncertainty that we decided not to budget a transfer at all in fiscal year 2021. And although the $34 million transfer seems high and things could change, we're aware of the concerns in the economy, from a possible recession to inflation, labor shortages. But the fail-safe we've always had with the transfers is that we don't have to transfer the entire amount budgeted. If we did face any future economic challenges, either in the upcoming budget year or even further down the road, we could always reduce that $34 million down to a level that would continue to fund general fund operations, along with meeting the needs of the capital project programs. That's exactly what we did actually in fiscal year 2020. We had a $6 million transfer budgeted, but because of the beginning of the pandemic, the economic uncertainty, we actually transferred only $3 million to the capital projects fund to fund critical programs such as technology and building and repair and maintenance, and kept the $3 million in the general fund in order to maintain operating expenditures. And it actually helped with funding of the voluntary employee separation program that came in fiscal year 2021. As far as the allocation of the $34 million to the capital projects fund, this table shows where those funds are going. And you can see at the first column of this table that at the end of this current fiscal year, 2022, these are the fund balances that total $22.9 million. And I just wanted to point out again, the technology replacement and upgrades program and the building repair and maintenance program, and regardless of our ability to fund capital programs, these two traditionally take priority. And you can see that we've actually replenished those funds by the end of this fiscal year. The amount you see here of $5 million and $6 million is enough to fund 1 or 2 years worth of needs, should those needs arrive, depending on whether or not the general fund has sufficient funds to transfer over. So we like to maintain at least a 2-year reserve in these two programs. And you'll see we have $4 million being transferred to each of these programs in order to fund upcoming expenditures. Outside of tightening our belts during a pandemic, the General Service Department and IT Department traditionally spend somewhere around $3 million in routine repairs and maintenance for facilities and for upgrades to technology. And by transferring these $4 million amounts to both of those programs, it covers the upcoming expenditures for the next fiscal year, along with maintaining a safe reserve for those two programs. The bulk of the rest of the transfers is going to the capital construction project or program, and that's $25 million. And we end up with $29.7 million at the end of fiscal year 2023, even after accounting for $4 million in budget expenditures for the capital construction program. That's the amount that our General Services Department believes is needed for the upcoming fiscal year for potentially breaking ground for a new library and also other capital programs that are on the horizon. And that's the budget in a nutshell. I can answer any questions that the trustees have.
Thank you, Foresto, for that thorough presentation. I'm familiar with it. We've already walked through it. So certainly I'll open it up to my fellow trustees to see if there are any clarifying questions that you might have for Foresto concerning the FY23 budget.
No, I'm good with his presentation.
Thank you, Sandra. Trustee Melendrez, any questions, or Trustee Wall?
No, I'm good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
None on my part. Good presentation. Thank you, Foresto.
Okay. And then the only question, I don't have a question about the budget, but the one thing I would probably ask Foresto, since we're just now sort of regenerating this committee work, is when would it be appropriate to maybe have a similar presentation to show actuals for FY22 compared to the budgeted FY22 with FY23?
That's traditionally done after the financial statements are audited, and that has taken place, that discussion, usually in November of each year. But we do have estimates of where we'll end up at the end of fiscal year 2022, and with each month that goes by, we have a better idea of where those actual 2022 numbers will total by the end of this fiscal year. And so with the additional finance and audit committee meetings that we're planning throughout the fiscal year, I don't believe we need to wait until November, Mr. Chair. If that's something that the executive director and the finance and audit committee would like to discuss earlier, we will likely have at least another finance and audit committee meeting between now and November, likely over the summer, and we can present that information to the board then after reporting to the executive director.
Okay. And certainly the format is nice, compact that you just did today. If you could just maybe just add another column that just shows FY22 actuals to date, and that would work fine. And if we're meeting, say in, I guess, July, is that our July? It could be maybe expenditures as of the end of May, right? So that we're not putting any additional hardship on the staff to try to get numbers done, to close out a month that's ending close to the meeting. So I'm certainly comfortable with that if Director Watson is okay with that.
Sounds good to me, Chair Rogers, regarding that. I get a snapshot of the actuals bi-weekly from Foresto on a lot of the expenditures. So no, that's not a heavy lift.
And my request is not necessarily that it's for the general board meeting, but more so for our conversation in this setting. And if we think it's appropriate to maybe escalate it to the full board, then we could do that if needed. But it's more so just for this meeting. So if that's something, Lynn, we could just maybe add as a future reoccurring agenda item, is just sort of a review of the actuals, would be great.
Will do.
Okay, so that concludes our sort of new business. So I'll open up if there are any questions of anyone who's on the call before we go to the final agenda item for public comment. All right, in the virtual world, I counted 3 Mississippi, so no one said anything. So I assume we're all satisfied. So again, Floresto, thank you for the thorough presentation. And then Lynn, I'll defer to you one more time to see if we've had any public comments since we started.
We do not have any public comment.
All right, with that said, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
All right, we are officially adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Floresto, as always, and team, and Director Watson, thank you for preparing all the notes and getting us squared away and in and out of the meeting. So thank you again, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a great rest
Thanks,
of the day.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Everybody,
Great
take care.
day.
Bye-bye.